Some moments burn themselves into your soul, moments when the world shifts and you realize you're not just a bystander anymore. That Saturday afternoon in Maplewood Park was one of them. I heard my son scream a sound so raw, so filled with terror, it stopped my heart. When I saw Margaret Hensley, our HOA president, standing over my blind son with a leather belt in her hand, I didn't hesitate. I charged across the grass, tackled her to the ground, and made sure she felt the weight of her own cruelty. She thought she could hurt my boy and walk away. She didn't know I was a federal judge, and she had no idea I'd make her answer for it in front of the entire neighborhood. This isn't just a story about an HOA gone rogue. It's about the day I turned a belt into a gavel and a park into a testament to justice. It was a warm June day in suburban Virginia, the kind where the air smells of fresh-cut grass and kids' laughter echoes through the trees. Maplewood Park was our community's pride: manicured lawns, winding paths, and a rose garden that Margaret Hensley treated like a national treasure. I sat on a bench under a sycamore tree, sipping lukewarm coffee, my eyes on my son, Ethan. At 12, Ethan had been blind since birth, but he was no fragile thing. He navigated the world with a cane, his steps sure, his ears tuned to every sound: the hum of cicadas, the rustle of leaves. He loved that park, mapping its paths in his mind, smiling as he tilted his head to catch the breeze. I didn't hover. Ethan needed freedom, not a shadow. But that day, something felt wrong. My gut twisted, my coffee cup trembled in my hand. I scanned the park: joggers, families, and there, near the rose garden, Margaret Hensley, her navy blazer crisp, her eyes locked on my son. It started with a shout, sharp and venomous. "Stop right there." Margaret's voice cut through the park like a blade. Ethan had wandered near the roses, his cane brushing the edge of the mulch. He couldn't see the flowers, of course, but to Margaret, that was no excuse. She marched toward him, heels clicking, one hand reaching behind her back. Then came the scream, Ethan's scream, a sound that tore through me like shrapnel. My coffee cup hit the ground. I ran. When I reached him, the sight stopped my breath. Ethan was curled on the grass, arms shielding his head, his cane snapped in two. Above him stood Margaret, face twisted with rage, a belt in her hand. She struck him once, twice, 3 times, each snap cracking like a whip. "This is what happens when you let these kids run wild," she shrieked. "They ruin everything." Ethan sobbed, confused, terrified, unable to understand why this woman was hurting him for stepping near flowers he couldn't see. Margaret didn't stop. "You people don't belong here," she spat. "You're a liability." I saw red. I lunged, grabbing her wrist mid-swing. She yelped, startled, but it was too late. The park had gone silent. Families froze, some pulling out phones to record. Margaret turned to me, unrepentant. He was destroying HOA property. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I pulled Ethan close, feeling the welts under his shirt, his tears soaking my chest. This wasn't a mistake. This was hate. And in that moment, something inside me snapped, not in despair, but in resolve. Margaret Hensley had just crossed a line no law could forgive, and she was about to learn that the boy she attacked was the son of a federal judge. Margaret didn't flinch, even as I held her wrist, even as Ethan trembled in my arms. "You think you're above the rules," she hissed. "These defective kids don't get to ruin my park." I stared, stunned by the venom in her words. Ethan whimpered, clutching my arm. That sound broke me. I shoved Margaret back, hard. She stumbled, her heels catching in the grass, and fell into the rose garden she'd fought to protect. Dirt smeared her blazer, petals scattered. "Still," she hissed, "assaulting the HOA president? You'll lose everything." I stepped forward, towering over her. "You touched my son," I growled. "And you're worried about roses?" I kicked the belt from her reach and picked it up, the leather still warm. I held it up, not to strike, but to show her what true power looks like. "Put it on," I said, voice like ice. She blinked. "What? Wrap it around your neck?" I said. "Since you treat children like dogs." Her mouth gaped. "You're crazy." "No," I said, kneeling close. "I'm a federal judge, and I just watched you beat a blind child in public." Her face went pale. I yanked her up by her collar, forcing her to kneel beside Ethan, who was still curled in the grass. "Look at him," I said. She turned away. "Look at him." Her eyes, cold and hollow, finally met the boy she'd brutalized. "You don't get to hide behind your rules today," I said. Not your HOA, not your clipboard. You stepped into my courtroom the second you raised that belt. The crowd gasped. Phones kept recording. I turned to them and shouted, "Someone call the sheriff. Tell them the HOA president just assaulted a disabled child, and the father is pressing charges." Margaret whimpered, trying to stand. I pushed her back down. "Stay there," I snapped. "That's where you belong." Her hands twitched toward the belt. "Try it," I growled. "See what happens." She froze, her HOA mask crumbling, revealing the bitter cruelty beneath. "I was enforcing the rules," she barked. "He was trespassing." "He's blind, Margaret," I roared. "He couldn't see your precious flowers." "That's not my fault." "It is now." I pulled out my phone, hit speaker, and dialed. "Sheriff's Dispatch," the voice answered. "This is Judge Daniel Harper, Federal Bench ID 47291, I said, loud enough for all to hear. "I'm reporting a felony assault on a disabled minor. Suspect is Margaret Hensley, detained at Maplewood Park. I need marked units, ADA protocol, and CPS notification." The crowd went silent. Margaret's jaw dropped. "You're not a judge," she stammered. I leaned in, my shadow over her. "Yes, I am." A woman, Sarah Mitchell, stepped forward, phone in hand. "I recorded everything," she whispered. Margaret looked around, drowning in the attention she once craved. "This is slander," she screamed. "I have allies in the sheriff's office." I raised an eyebrow. "No, Margaret. You have handcuffs coming." Sirens wailed. A patrol car rolled in, gravel crunching. Deputy Tom Reynolds recognized me. "Judge Harper." He nodded, then turned to Margaret. "Ma'am, hands behind your back." She recoiled. "I'm the HOA president." "Not anymore," a voice muttered from the crowd. She thrashed as the cuffs clicked, her screams fading as the car door slammed. I kissed Ethan's head. "It's over, buddy," I whispered. "She can't hurt you." But I knew this was just the beginning. By Monday, whispers spread. She didn't know he was blind. She was stressed. She's done so much for Maplewood. Done so much. She beat my son. Yet the lies grew. Margaret's lawyer claimed self-defense, saying Ethan had threatened her an absurd lie about a blind boy with a broken cane. Worse, she told neighbors I'd faked being a judge to ruin her. That was it. I'd avoided the spotlight my whole career, but this wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about every neighbor she'd bullied, every rule she'd twisted into a weapon. I called Detective Laura Bennett, a trusted colleague. I gave her everything: Sarah's footage, Ethan's medical report, a year's worth of Margaret's threatening HOA notes. "This is a pattern," Laura said. "Discriminatory abuse." I wasn't done. I filed an emergency protective order with Judge Emily Carter, barring Margaret from HOA leadership. Then I submitted a complaint to the U.S. Attorney's Office for ADA violations and hate crimes. Margaret wasn't just facing a local charge. She was now the target of a federal case. The courtroom was packed, tension thick. Margaret sat alone, her lawyer weary, her face smug. She didn't look sorry, just annoyed. Her attorney claimed she'd panicked under stress. I didn't buy it. Regret without accountability is theater. Called to the stand as a father, I swore my oath and faced the jury. "My name is Daniel Harper. My son, Ethan, is 12 and blind. He's braver than anyone here. He walks Maplewood Park by memory, names birds by their calls. That day, he brushed a rose garden he couldn't see. For that, Margaret Hensley beat him with a belt in front of families. She called him a liability. She didn't see a child, she saw an inconvenience." Margaret sat, arms crossed, unmoved. "She acted out of superiority," I said. "If you let her walk, you're telling every disabled child their pain doesn't matter. Leaders protect the vulnerable. They don't attack them." The courtroom stilled. The jury took 2 hours. Guilty on all counts: felony assault, hate crime, ADA violations. 7 years in prison, no parole for 5, $60,000 in damages, and a lifetime ban from HOA rolls. The gavel fell like thunder. Margaret gasped, finally small. But justice doesn't stop with a verdict. Maplewood unraveled. Margaret's rain fines for minor infractions, threats slipped under doors had held the neighborhood hostage. Her mugshot on the news broke the spell. Neighbors turned on her. The HOA board resigned, unable to face the shame. At a community meeting, I walked in with a binder of evidence. "We're not here for order," I said, slamming it down. "We're here for accountability." Sarah proposed disbanding the board for a new resident-led committee. The vote was unanimous. Margaret's empire was ashes. 3 months later, bulldozers reshaped Maplewood Park. The rose garden was replaced with accessible paths-textured pavers, braille signs, railings for all. The community named it Ethan's Haven. At the dedication, Ethan traced the plaque's braille. For every child who deserves to play free. He turned to me. Dad, is it safe now? I nodded. Yes, son. Because people finally stood up. Kids played some with canes, others with prosthetics lawing, fearless. Margaret's shadow lingered in old fears, but we weren't afraid anymore. That evening, I spoke to the crowd. Margaret thought rules made us better. She was wrong. Compassion does. Inclusion does. Truth does. This park is proof we're free. Applause followed, then tears, hugs, and apologies. Later, Ethan sat under the sycamore. She tried to break me, he said. But my name's here now. That was just as her cruelty turned into his legacy. Some nights, I returned to the park alone, sitting where it began. I used to think silence kept us safe, but silence let Margaret thrive. Never again. Justice wasn't the verdict or the money. It was Ethan's haven, the moment Ethan smiled and said, "My name's here." It was turning pain into purpose, fear into community. The bench now has a plaque. Here, fear ended. Here we stood. Margaret's belt is locked in evidence, her legacy erased. Ethan walks with friends now, teaching them to hear the trees. And I've learned justice isn't always in court. Sometimes, you deliver it yourself. What would you have done if you saw this happen? Have you faced injustice so cruel it woke something in you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe violence like this deserves a public reckoning, or should it stay in the courts? Take a stand. Tell us where you draw the line. If this story stirred you, hit like, subscribe, and join us for more stories of truth breaking through silence. Your voice matters. Let's keep standing together.